What happens when the world's most secretive intelligence agency executes a perfect assassination, and then the entire operation gets played back on television, frame by frame, in high definition? On January 19, 2010, 11 European tourists checked into hotels across Dubai. They carried tennis rackets, wore resort casual clothing, and behaved like every other visitor to one of the world's most surveilled cities. Within 18 hours, one of them would kill a Hamas military commander in his hotel room. Within 72 hours, Dubai police would release something no intelligence agency had ever faced: a complete reconstruction of the operation, captured by 600 CCTV cameras. This is how Mossad killed Mahmoud al-Mabhouh, and this is how they lost control of the story. Peter Elvinger landed at Dubai International at 11:47 a.m. January 18th. His passport said Luxembourg. His cover said Medical Devices Conference. His actual job was to decide whether the operation should happen at all. Elvinger was 52, a veteran of 2 decades in Kedan Unit's Mossad's targeted killing division. He had operated in Beirut, Damascus, Tunis, and Khartoum. He had killed before, but Dubai was different. Dubai wasn't a war zone where bodies disappeared into alleys. It was a city engineered to record everything. Every airport terminal, hotel lobby, elevator, and taxi queue was monitored by closed-circuit cameras linked to police algorithms designed to flag suspicious patterns. Elvinger's role was contingency operator. If the plan broke, he would decide in real time whether to abort or adapt. No phone call to Tel Aviv, no waiting for approval. Just his judgment and whatever the cameras hadn't seen yet. He checked into the Jumeirah Beach Hotel under his false name, asked about tennis courts, and spent the afternoon walking the marina. He was building a baseline, a pattern of normal tourist behavior that would make tomorrow's movements invisible. That night, he ate alone, returned to his room at 11 p.m., and reviewed the target file one last time. Mahmoud al-Mabhouh was a founder of Hamas's military wing, personally responsible for kidnapping and executing 2 Israeli soldiers in 1989. He lived in Damascus under Syrian protection and rarely traveled, but 3 times in the past year he had flown to Dubai to coordinate Iranian arms shipments to Gaza. Dubai was neutral ground, no Israeli embassy, no extradition treaties, a city that looked the other way when money was involved. Mossad had been tracking al-Mabhouh for 18 months. They knew his travel patterns, his aliases, his contacts, and they knew he was coming to Dubai on January 19th to finalize another weapons deal. This was the window. Kill him here, or lose him back to Syria for another year. But the surveillance problem was unsolvable. A traditional hit team operatives arriving together, meeting in person, executing the kill and leaving, immediately would create patterns Dubai's cameras would catch, instantly. The operation required something Mossad had never attempted: a distributed assassination. A team large enough to cover contingencies, but dispersed enough to avoid algorithmic detection. Operatives who would never meet on camera, who would move like tourists, who would kill a man in one of the world's most monitored cities and leave before anyone noticed. The first wave arrived on January 19th. 6 men, 5 women, traveling from Paris, Frankfurt, London, and Zurich. They carried passports from Ireland, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, all real documents, all stolen or cloned from dual nationals living in Israel. They wore polo shirts, sundresses, light jackets. They carried tennis equipment and shopping bags. 4 checked into the Al Bustan Rotina, where al-Mabhouh had reserved room 230. The others dispersed to nearby hotels. Gail Folliard landed at 1:15 p.m. on an Irish passport. She was 38, a Kaidan surveillance specialist with a cover life in Dublin and a real life in Tel Aviv. She checked into the Al Bustan at 2:40 p.m., 14 minutes before al-Mabhouh's flight touched down. She requested a room on the 2nd floor. The clerk assigned her room 237, 7 doors from the target. She changed into tennis whites, went to the gym, and stayed visible on 3 separate cameras for 90 minutes. She was establishing an alibi in real time. At 3:15 p.m., al-Mabhouh's Emirates flight landed. He cleared customs with a forged Palestinian Authority passport, took a taxi to the Al Bustan, and checked in at 4:07 p.m. He went upstairs alone. He did not notice the woman in tennis clothes. He did not notice the 4 Europeans who had checked into his floor in the past 2 hours. He did not notice the 2 men waiting in the parking garage. At 4:30 p.m., Elvinger sat in a rental car 3 blocks away, watching the hotel entrance through binoculars. The team was in position. The target was inside. The cameras were recording everything. And then 2 Emirati men in business suits walked into the lobby, spoke quickly to the front desk, and began scanning the guest registry. Elvinger's hand moved to his phone. One call would abort the entire operation. But if he called now, al-Mabhouh would finish his meeting tomorrow and disappear back to Damascus. The window would close. The 18 months of tracking would be wasted. He watched the 2 men. He watched the lobby. He didn't dial, not yet. But for the first time since landing, he considered the possibility that Dubai already knew someone was coming. The 2 Emirati men left the lobby at 4:52 p.m. They didn't speak to al-Mabhouh. They didn't ask about the European guests. They walked out, got into a black sedan, and drove away. Elvinger watched them disappear into traffic. He put down the phone. The operation was still green, but something felt wrong. Dubai wasn't supposed to have advanced intelligence. The operation had been compartmentalized for 4 months. Only 12 people in Mossad knew the target. Only 6 knew the timeline. The Europeans who had just checked in didn't know each other's real names. They communicated through dead drops and prearranged signals, never electronically. There was no leak. There couldn't be, unless Dubai wasn't looking for Mossad, unless they were looking for al-Mabhouh. At 6:15 p.m., 2 operatives dressed as hotel maintenance staff approached room 230. Michael Bodenheimer carried a toolbox. James Clark wore a service uniform purchased 3 days earlier from a supplier in Deira. They knocked twice. No answer. Bodenheimer pressed his ear to the door. Silence. He tried the handle. Locked from the inside. The plan required al-Mabhouh to open the door. If he didn't, they would have to force entry loud, visible, and certain, to alert other guests. Clark leaned against the wall, blocking the hallway camera's sightline. Bodenheimer knocked again. Nothing. They had 60 seconds to decide. Proceed and risk exposure. Abort and lose the target, or wait. Bodenheimer radioed the lobby team. The message reached Elvinger at 6:22 p.m. Target non-responsive. Possible abort scenario. Elvinger stared at the phone. If they aborted now, al-Mabhouh would complete his arms deal tomorrow and vanish into Syria. If they forced the door, every camera in the hotel would record the breach. If they waited for him to leave the room, they would have to enter while he was gone and remain inside when he returned. Riskier, longer exposure, higher chance of confrontation. He called back. Hold position. Do not abort. Await secondary window. Bodenheimer and Clark withdrew to the stairwell. They waited 41 minutes. At 7:03 p.m., al-Mabhouh opened his door, walked to the elevator, and left the hotel on foot. He bought a phone card at a convenience store, made 2 calls from a payphone, and returned at 7:45 p.m. While he was gone, Bodenheimer and Clark entered room 230 using a cloned master keycard. They had 90 seconds. Clark checked the bathroom and closet. Bodenheimer placed a lipstick camera inside the smoke detector, angled toward the door. The camera fed live video to Gail Folliard's laptop 3 floors below. If al-Mabhouh returned early, she would see him the moment he swiped his keycard. They left at 7:13 p.m. through a side exit, removed their uniforms in a parking garage, and disappeared into the city. Their part was done. They would not return to the hotel. They had given the executioners inside access. The rest was up to the kill team. At 8:24 p.m., al-Mabhouh returned to his room for the second time. The lipstick camera showed him removing his shoes, sitting on the bed, turning on the television. He ordered room service. He made a phone call. He looked relaxed, unaware. But Folliard, watching the feed from her laptop, noticed something. Al-Mabhouh kept glancing at the door, not casually, deliberately, as if he was expecting someone, or as if he thought someone had been inside. She radioed Elvinger. Target behavior inconsistent. Possible awareness. Elvinger was still in the rental car, 3 blocks away. He had been there for 4 hours. His back ached. His eyes burned from staring at the hotel entrance. And now, Folliard was telling him the target might know. If al-Mabhouh suspected his room had been compromised, he would call hotel security. If he called security, they would review the keycard logs. If they reviewed the logs, they would see the clone swipe at 7:11 p.m. The entire operation would unravel before the kill even happened. Elvinger had a decision to make: pull the executioners now and abort, or assume El Mapu's paranoia was routine and proceed. He chose to proceed, but for the first time in 20 years of operations, he wasn't sure he had made the right call. At the 8:31 p.m., someone knocked on El Mapu's door. He stood, walked to the peephole, and looked out. The lipstick camera showed him hesitate. 5 seconds passed, then he unlocked the door. 2 men entered: Roy Allen Cannon and Evan Dennings, both Keaton-trained executioners. The plan was to incapacitate Al Mapu with an electroshock device, inject succinylcholine into his carotid artery, and stage the scene to look like cardiac arrest. Clean, silent, invisible. But Al Mapu fought. The lipstick camera captured movement shadows thrashing. A lamp hitting the floor. Something heavy slamming into the wall. The struggle lasted 47 seconds. When it stopped, Al Mapu was face down on the carpet, unconscious. Cannon injected the drug. Dennings checked his pulse. At 8:33 p.m., the target was dead, but the room was wrong. The lamp was shattered. The bedspread was pulled to the floor. Scuff marks streaked the wall. It didn't look like natural causes anymore. It looked like a fight. Cannon and Dennings had a choice: stay and clean the scene, risking being caught inside the room, or leave immediately and hope the evidence was ambiguous enough to delay suspicion. They chose speed. They wiped the door handle, repositioned the body on the bed, turned off the lights, and left through the service stairs at 8:37 p.m., 4 minutes after the kill. Folliard watched them exit on the hallway camera. She closed her laptop, packed her bag, and checked out of the hotel at 9:02 p.m. She took a taxi to the airport and boarded a flight to Rome. By midnight, the entire team had left Dubai. Elvinger was the last out, departing on a 1:45 a.m. flight to Zurich. The operation was complete. The target was eliminated. The team was extracted. No arrests, no witnesses, no immediate alarms. But as Elvinger sat in the departure lounge, waiting for his gate to open, he turned on his phone and saw a missed call from a Mossad handler in Tel Aviv. The message was brief: Dubai police are moving faster than expected. Cameras flagged unusual guest activity. They're reviewing footage now. Maintain cover. Do not deviate from exfil plan. Elvinger deleted the message. He boarded his flight. He took his seat. And for the first time since the operation began, he understood what they had actually done. They had killed the target, but they had also left behind a story. A complete, traceable, time-stamped story that Dubai's cameras had recorded from beginning to end. The only question now was how long it would take Dubai police to piece it together, and whether any of them would still be anonymous when they did. Al Mapu's body was discovered at 1:30 p.m. on January 20th by housekeeping. The maid knocked twice, received no answer, and used her master key. She found him lying on his back in bed, arms at his sides, fully clothed. She assumed he was sleeping. Then she noticed his eyes were half open. She called the front desk. The manager called Dubai police. A patrol officer arrived at 2:15 p.m. and immediately called for a medical examiner. The examiner arrived at 3:18 p.m., examined the body for 12 minutes, and made a preliminary assessment. Possible cardiac arrest, but the positioning was unusual. People who die of heart attacks don't arrange themselves neatly in bed. At 4:40 p.m., the case was escalated to Lieutenant General Dahi Khalfan Tamim, head of Dubai's Criminal Investigation Department. Tamim was not an investigator. He was a bureaucrat who understood that high-profile cases were career opportunities. A dead Hamas commander in a luxury hotel was exactly that. He ordered a full forensic review and a camera audit. Every feed within 2 kilometers of the Al Bustan, going back 72 hours. Every guest who checked in. Every visitor who entered the lobby. Every taxi that stopped outside. He wanted timestamps, passport scans, credit card receipts, and movement patterns. By 9:00 p.m., the audit had flagged 32 individuals who entered the hotel within 12 hours of the estimated time of death. 11 had checked out within 6 hours of the body being discovered. All 11 were European passport holders. None had returned to the hotel after leaving. Tamim leaked the story to a local news outlet at 11:30 p.m. By midnight, Al Jazeera was running it as breaking news: Hamas commander found dead in Dubai hotel under suspicious circumstances. In Tel Aviv, Elvinger was asleep when his phone rang. It was 1:47 a.m., January 21st. A Mossad handler told him to stay off all networks, avoid public places, and wait for further instructions. Elisemwe, operation was no longer covert. Dubai knew something had happened, they just didn't know what yet. Elvinger asked if the team had been compromised. The handler said they didn't know. The cameras had captured movement, but facial recognition hadn't been run yet. If Dubai police moved slowly, the team might stay anonymous. If they moved quickly, everyone would be identified within 48 hours. Elvinger hung up. He sat in the dark and tried to calculate how long it would take Dubai to connect the dots. Traditional investigations took weeks, but Dubai wasn't using traditional methods. They were using algorithms that could cross-reference hotel check-ins, flight manifest, and camera footage in real time. He gave it 3 days before his face was on television. He was wrong. It took 2. On January 22nd, Dubai police released the first wave of surveillance images. 11 faces, 11 passport photos, 11 names. They had tracked every member of the team from the moment they entered Dubai International to the moment they left. The CCTV network had logged every elevator ride, every lobby interaction, every taxi departure. But the images weren't immediately damaging. The passports were fake, the names were aliases. As long as the operatives' real identities stayed hidden, they were still protected. Then, the passports started talking. On January 24th, the British Foreign Office confirmed that 6 of the UK passports belonged to real British citizens living in Israel. They hadn't reported their documents stolen. They hadn't traveled to Dubai. Their identities had been cloned without their knowledge. The Irish government confirmed the same for 3 Irish passports. France and Germany followed within hours. Mossad hadn't just used stolen passports. They had used the identities of real people, dual nationals whose lives were now linked forever to an assassination they had no part in. The victims appeared on television, confused and terrified, holding up their passports and insisting they had never left Israel. The political fallout was immediate. The British government summoned the Israeli ambassador. Ireland launched a formal protest. Germany recalled diplomatic staff. By January 26th, Mossad's European passport network built over 30 years was effectively destroyed. But the real damage came on January 28th when Dubai police released a second document, a minute-by-minute reconstruction of the operation, complete with CCTV screenshots, hotel keycard logs, and cell tower pings. They had mapped the entire kill sequence. The advanced scouts who arrived on January 18th. The surveillance operatives who checked in hours before Al-Mabhouh. The fake maintenance staff who entered his room. The executioners who killed him. The cleaners who left immediately after. Dubai police knew everything. They knew the team structure. They knew the roles. They knew the timing, and they had video evidence for all of it. Gail Folliard learned she had been compromised on February 10th. She was living under her Dublin cover, working a finance job, waiting for Mossad to tell her it was safe to resume normal life. Instead, they told her to pack one bag, destroy all personal records, and report to a safe house in Jerusalem within 12 hours. When she arrived, a handler showed her the footage. She appeared in 14 separate frames. Checking into the hotel, walking through the lobby, entering the gym, leaving the gym, sitting in the second-floor hallway with a laptop open. The laptop that had received the live feed from the lipstick camera in Al-Mabhouh's room. She hadn't made a single operational mistake, but she had been in too many places. The cameras had tracked her. The algorithms had flagged her movements as non-random, and now her face was associated with a state-sponsored assassination. Mossad offered her a deal. New identity, new life, complete severance from her past. She would never travel abroad again. She would never contact her family in Ireland. She would live under an alias inside Israel, protected only as long as she remained invisible. She signed the agreement that night, but before she left the safe house, she asked the handler a question. Did we know Dubai had this kind of surveillance capability? The handler paused. Then he said, we knew they had cameras. We didn't know they could do this with them. Folliard realized then what had actually happened. Mossad hadn't failed tactically. They had succeeded. The target was dead. The team was extracted. The operation had gone exactly as planned. But they had planned for the wrong century. They had assumed Dubai would investigate like Beirut in 1988, or Tunis in 1995 slowly. manually, reliant on witness testimony and forensic evidence that could be staged or destroyed. They hadn't planned for a city that could reconstruct an entire operation from digital breadcrumbs alone. The kill was clean, the exfiltration was flawless. But the story, the complete, undeniable, high-definition story that Dubai police packaged and released to the world, was something Mossad had never confronted before. Folliard asked one more question. "Are we still doing operations like this?" The handler shook his head. "Not in cities like Dubai, not anymore." By February 15th, 4 European governments had expelled Israeli diplomats. Britain recalled its ambassador for consultations. Ireland issued travel warnings for Israeli passport holders. Germany suspended intelligence sharing agreements. France launched an internal review of all dual nationals with Israeli ties working in sensitive government positions. The diplomatic cost was measurable. The operational cost was permanent. Mossad's European passport network had taken 3 decades to build. It relied on a simple vulnerability: dual nationals who held citizenship in both Israel and a European country could have their identities cloned without ever knowing. A passport reported lost during travel, a document photographed during a routine security check, an identity stolen years before it would ever be used. The network provided clean cover for operatives entering hostile or neutral territories. A French passport didn't trigger the same scrutiny as an Israeli one. A British passport allowed visa-free access to 180 countries. A German passport carried institutional trust. Dubai burned all of it. Not because the passports were detected during the operation, but because the aftermath forced their disclosure. The 6 British citizens whose faces appeared on Al Jazeera had never consented to their identities being used. They were victims, and their public testimony broadcast internationally made it politically impossible for any European government to ignore what Israel had done. By March 2010, every intelligence agency in Europe had updated its protocols. Passport cloning was no longer a quiet diplomatic complaint. It was a prosecutable offense. Dual nationals working in government or security sectors were flagged for review. Mossad operatives who had used European cover identities for years were suddenly exposed by association. The network didn't collapse overnight, but it became unusable. Every passport that had ever been linked to a Mossad operation, even tangentially, was now a liability. Operatives who had traveled under French, British, or Irish aliases for a decade could never use those identities again. Elvinger never left Israel after Dubai. His Luxembourg passport was flagged in Interpol databases within a week of his face being released. His cover story medical devices sales executive was dismantled by European journalists who traced his supposed employer to a shell company registered in Cyprus with no employees, no office, and no operational history. He had spent 30 years building a legend. Dubai destroyed it in 72 hours. In April 2010, he sat for an internal Mossad review. The debrief lasted 6 hours. They asked him why he didn't abort when the 2 Emirati men entered the lobby. They asked him why he authorized entry into al-Mabhou's room while the target was still alive and mobile. They asked him why he proceeded, despite Folliard's warning that al-Mabhou's behavior suggested possible awareness. Elvinger answered each question the same way. The window was narrow. The target was leaving Dubai within 18 hours. If we aborted, we lost him for another year. Maybe permanently. The review officer asked a final question. Knowing what you know now, knowing Dubai's surveillance capabilities, knowing the passport exposure, knowing the diplomatic fallout, would you still authorize the operation? Elvinger didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "We got him. We always get them." But the cost this time was higher than the kill was worth. The review ended without formal reprimand. Elvinger wasn't punished. He was quietly moved to an internal advisory role, analyzing operational risk for future missions. He would never operate abroad again. His career had ended the moment his face appeared on Al Jazeera, but the institutional cost ran deeper than one operative's retirement. Mossad had built its reputation on invisibility, the agency that operated in shadows. That struck without warning and vanished without evidence. That eliminated enemies of the state while maintaining plausible deniability. Dubai shattered that reputation. For the first time in Mossad's history, an entire operation was reconstructed and broadcast to the world in high definition. The mystique was gone. The world had watched frame by frame as Mossad executed a killing, and they had seen that even the world's most feared intelligence agency could be caught on camera. The operation succeeded tactically. Mahmoud al-Mabhouh was dead. The team was extracted. No operatives were arrested. But strategically, Dubai was a catastrophe. The cost burned networks, exposed operatives, diplomatic isolation, and a humiliated intelligence apparatus far exceeded the value of killing one Hamas commander. Within 6 months, Hamas replaced al-Mabhouh. Within a year, Iranian arms shipments to Gaza resumed. Within 2 years, rocket stockpiles in Gaza had doubled. The operation didn't stop the weapons flow. It didn't deter Hamas. It didn't weaken Iran's regional influence. It just proved that in the age of total surveillance, there are no more invisible operations. Only operations the world hasn't seen yet. If you want to understand how intelligence agencies adapted when anonymity became impossible, or how Mossad rebuilt after Dubai exposed an entire generation of operatives, explore more stories of covert operations that succeeded perfectly and failed strategically.